Many Christians don't know, and people who are outside the Christian traditions don't know that this option, this way of thinking about God and the world and the interplay and the liveliness of all of creation is even available. In the conversation that we're going to air next week, I was sharing some of these same ideas with my friends from the Humanist Organization and the Atheist Organization, and they basically, and I think fairly, looked at me like, well, that's not Christianity, right? Like, that's not what anybody we've ever heard describe Christianity describes it as. Rather, it's that the world is statically made and there's a set of laws by God and they compete with the laws of science, and people really feel in a bind. How does it go for you and others who are proclaiming this story of a more relational, interactive, process-oriented interplay of all of creation and God? When you start talking about this with folks, do you get that glassy-eyed look or that confused look or that run for the pitchforks? There's a heretic in our midst?
Well, I think quite often we do. And quite often people have an image of what Christianity is. Mm-hmm. And it's maybe the image they got from the folks who show up in the news. I mean, we spend 2 weeks on somebody who's planning to burn the Quran.
Right.
We have court suits about intelligent design. We have Christians who believe that the world was created in 6 days, 7,000, 8,000 years ago, and they get the airplay. But I believe when people give process theology and progressive theology and emerging theology a fair hearing, they recognize there's an alternative. I don't have any complaint about humanists and atheists, although many of them, frankly, don't believe in the God I believe in. Mm-hmm. So when I encounter an atheist, I oftentimes ask the question, well, what God don't you believe in?
Yeah.
And the answer is that God is pretty much the same one I don't believe in. And if that were the only option for me, I'd be in that camp.
Right, right.
But here around Christmas time, we talk about the incarnation. We talk about God being in the world. We talk about a manger that gives a vision of where God is always and everywhere. You know, the true light, as John's prologue says, mm-hmm. enlightens all. Mm-hmm. It's not a one-shot deus ex machina coming from the outside. It's something that's present always and everywhere and is luring us forward toward greater and greater openness to others, to diversity, to the pluralism of our time, and to the truth in science. The old adage from some of the early church fathers has been forgotten. Wherever truth is present, mm-hmm. God is its source.
Hmm. Now, what are the pushbacks that you hear? Because I know that one of the things that when I start talking in these ways, people will say to me like, well, are you talking about like God as a force, or are you talking about God in like personal terms, like God as a personal character? And because a lot of people, have this notion, whether they like it or not, about, they're sort of being old man time representing God, but God at least is something like a human being in their mind. And then, when they might listen to you there, they might say to themselves, well, does this end with, and may the force be with you? Or how do you think about those ideas?
Well, of course, Christianity at its best has held those in tension. The Christianity at its best and our Jewish parents at their best have always believed that God was more than we can imagine, mm-hmm. and yet caring about the smallest details. I like the notion of the parental mother-father metaphors or images of God as being at least pointers toward God's nature. No child ever fully understands their parent. I have a 16-month-old grandchild. And
I thought you were going to say child, and I was going to say, well, Bruce, congratulations.
I think I've been past that. I'm working on the grandchildren these days and happy with it. But a 16-month-old grandchild who doesn't fully fathom what I'm doing, but the one thing I believe he's fully fathoming is that I love him. Mm-hmm. And that I adjust to what he's interested in. He's interested in stars right now, so we go out and look at the stars every night, and I have a little planetarium that he looks at whenever I'm visiting. Mm. And I, in a sense, am adapting myself to his understanding. And I think the image of God as a patient, loving parent who works for our best, who sometimes sets limits, but who recognizes that the best type of parenting encourages creativity and freedom and not coercion, The non-narcissistic parent, the parent who really listens and adjusts and feels the joy and pain of the child, is always more than a child can fathom. And, of course, we live in a universe, at least I believe, that has at least 125 billion galaxies, according to my cosmologist friends, and has been around for 14 billion years. So there sure is a lot we don't know. But I believe that infinite is also intimate, and that it's intimately caring for us, and that's what the Incarnation's about, that God is really with us in the midst of our lives, not as some supernatural force that operates outside of nature and outside of the causes in our world, but right within them, seeking the best, and not always getting it sometimes. I mean, that's the biblical story as far as I'm concerned, that God has to adjust to human frailty and human hard-heartedness and the darkness that John's Gospel talks about.
Yeah, and that God is, and this is where a lot of people, feel like it clashes a bit with their kind of classical view of God, is they would say, well, then God becomes dependent on people's behavior, and I'm quite comfortable with that, but I know that there's other people for whom that's kind of the holy grail, like you don't want God to be bossed around by the whims of me or my knuckleheaded brother-in-law kind of thing,
Right.
So how do you? We only have a minute left in this segment, so maybe we should talk about it in the second segment. But how does your mind work when you're posed with those kinds of questions?
Well, I still go back to the parental image of a small child, and we're pretty small in the universe. Is that it's a choice of God's part to respond creatively to us, and that God's always going to outlast us in the same way that I outlast a child's tantrum.
Right.
That God always has resources to come back and come back and come back. I mean, we're dealing with the cosmos, and Psalm 8 got it right. Where are we in the cosmos? And yet God cares for us.
Hey, Bruce, we're going to tell people again this in the second segment, but where can people keep up in track of you and in your writings and other things that you're up to?
Well, of course, they can catch me at bruceepperly.com, my website.
BruceEpperly, bruceepperly.com. And you have a book coming out here in the next couple of months,
right? I have a sequel to my